Hi everyone. I'm so excited to be interviewing Adam Barralet today. French last name. Pardon me if I didn't pronounce it 100%. I met Adam at a speaking event at the Body Mind Spirit Festival end of last year, 2019, and he was just super cool, and then we struck up a really good conversation, and I know that he should be my first actually male cast crew for my podcast, because I think you're actually the first man I interviewed it for my podcast. So that's interesting. So this is the first podcast I'm recording for 2020. So I don't know what that means. You may tell me, but oftentimes that I have a lot of female guests, and I had a couple guests, but you're the first actually male guest on my show. So not discriminating between both groups, but I thought it was just quite interesting because you're the first guest in the year. So welcome, Adam.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate being the first guest and the first male guest as well for 2020.
And 2020 is such an interesting number. Anyway, so I wanted to first give people a quick introduction about who you are. So for those who don't know Adam, he's a spiritual teacher, author, and mentor for success. And he runs a successful business. And please feel free to jump in if I missed anything. But I know that you work a lot with crystal and essential oil. Actually, many people refer him as the rock star of the crystal community, which I think is really cool. And Adam has been observing and living in tune with nature since childhood. So, I think you're so in sync with the environment. The way that I talk to you and interact with you, I really feel that. So I think we have a lot to talk about given the current climate in Australia. As we are recording this, is January 2020. So there's a lot of bushfire going on. So we're going to touch on that. So Adam, apart from teaching and working with crystal and essential oil, he's also very knowledgeable with animal guides, tarot, and astrology. So he often helps people to discover secret messages that the universe eagerly wants them to hear. So I want to know what the universe is very eager for us to hear. But so first of all, welcome. And I know that you had a surgery recently. So it may be harder for you to talk, but I hope you're okay.
No, thank you. Yes, I had a bit of orthodontic surgery, so some of my words might be a bit slurred. There's metal bits in my mouth, but I'll do my best, and I'm rapt to be on here and sharing some time with you and your listeners.
Great. And I'm really excited to have you as my first guest of the year, because as I said just in the introduction, that you're so in tune with nature. And given everybody now knows, even in Golden Globe, they talk about the bushfire in Australia. So I thought it was really interesting to have you so in tune with not just being in the nature, but you work with crystal and essential oil. All these are really powerful tools. So I think first of all, I want to ask you a little bit about your upbringing, because I know you sound like from like childhood and teenage, you're already very interested in all these things before you move on and try something else. Like not try something else, how to put it. Like you did take a different path. I think you worked and lived overseas, but it seems to from the very beginning, you were already very much listening to the nature. So tell us a little bit about your background and your upbringing and all that.
Yeah, so I grew up in the hills or the bush area of Western Australia. And there, I guess, we had big backyards, and there weren't really shopping malls or anything like that around. So me and my friends would ride along gravel paths from house to house. There'd be, kangaroos in the backyard, a lot of animals around and that type of thing. So I just found that was my natural environment. That's what I grew up with. Having animals around was kind of a natural thing. And I found, especially when I got into those teenage years, it can be a little bit tricky for everyone. I just tended to start going outside and sitting outside at night, and I found solace there rather than locking myself in a room and listening to music and that type of thing. I wouldn't say in those younger teenage years or my childhood I was spiritually drawn to nature. I just found it comforting because for me, that was home. And it wasn't until, I guess, as you get to older teenage years, you start questioning a bit more of why is this happening and why is that happening and what's the meaning of life and all those things. And because nature is such a part of that, that formed an instrumental role in my foundations of my passions and how I live my life.
So you were drawn to crystal quite early. And so can you describe like what made you find it so amazing? Because I thought today would be really interesting to talk about how people find clarity and passion with what they do. And then, what you were interested in the early years, say crystals and essential oils actually eventually become your work and your business. So what drawn you? I mean, what powerful things that have happened to lead you into, wow, there's something to explore here?
Yep. To think back, it was all kind of a bit of synchronicity, but it wasn't really profound at the time. My mum, who had separated from my father, had kind of gone on a bit of a, discover yourself journey, and had found a local crystal shop and had, her rose quartz and her Enya CD. And so I'd gone along to the crystal shop and I bought myself a little amethyst. And when I bought that, they gave you a bit of paper that told you what all the crystals were about. And so the next week I was back in and I bought another crystal and another crystal and another crystal. And, to the point now where my collection would probably be, I work with about 350 different crystals. Now, for me, maybe it's my being a Gemini, it's my nature. I love colourful and sparkly things and variety. So I just kind of was drawn to all these different things, and I'd read all these books about what people had been using them for thousands of years, and went, wow, what if I can do that as well? And it just kind of drew my curiosity, and I started to find different things happening when I worked with the crystals. And so that was kind of my early foundations. It wasn't this desire to, okay, I want to teach the world about it very then. It was just my own interest in discovering who I was and my own potential and what could be done. And the crystals kind of helped me with that.
And so often that people just find something they're curious about and they explore, they follow that, and they didn't even know that it's going to lead to like a lifelong passion or a tremendous career. But, it's that curiosity. So you mentioned that like people have been using crystals for thousands of years. So for those who are not familiar with crystal, tell us a bit more about like what do we do with it and why it's so powerful. And thousands of years sounds crazy. So tell us your take about crystals.
Well, it's right. Asia, Europe, different parts of Africa, pretty much all of the world, pretty much, I can't think of a civilization that probably didn't find a colourful bit of rock in the ground and thought, this is different from just normal pebbles. There's got to be something special for that. So they would use it for different things, for things that we're worried about in this day and age. Protection, love, abundance, spiritual development, finding peace and harmony and all those different things. And they'd use them in different ways. They'd use them in rituals. They'd use them as amulets or, wear them and that type of thing. And I guess what's been found and what I found interesting in my research as I kind of dived into it more, there were things, for example, like rubies were being used in both the East and the West for exactly the same thing before they're even trading or interacting with each other. So there's kind of this universal knowledge of this stone helps with this. And so that's what really kind of intrigued me, that I think with the modern age, there's so many new ideas and new things coming up. But the idea of crystals and other gifts of nature being able to help us is something that's stood the test of time and has lasted. And I think anything that stands the test of time must have some validity to it. And that's what really drew me to learn more about crystals.
It's the same with mythology and some herbal use that, even people before they can travel and trade. I mean, some theories suggest that maybe there are people who brought this knowledge from east to west and so forth, but actually a lot of other counter evidence suggests that no, actually people intuitively or through trial and error, they both found, say, the use of crystals or herbs or, even mythology, which is in a way a reflection of the cultural beliefs and all that. It's similar. They have the certain themes. So like you say, as an example, ruby, and I can say there's mythology in both East and West that they talk about resurrection. That is like very similar stories, very similar message. And then, how do they conclude the same thing, right? So that's really interesting. And I agree with you, something that lasts that long test of time. There may be something to it. So for those who don't know, so how does it work? Is it through vibration? So you talk about, say, can help with crystals, can help with love or protection or say abundance. So three distinctly different things. Does it work in a vibrational level? Is that how it helps people? How would you describe it?
Yeah, I guess what makes a crystal special from, paper or glass or plastic or anything like that is crystals grow in geometric shapes. So there's 7 different shapes that they'll grow in. And as we know, when we, tidy a bedroom wardrobe or a kitchen cupboard, we put everything in neat and tidy and we can fit a lot more in. So crystals tend to hold a lot more energy than other things. And so they tend to, when some people hold them, they feel the energy or they sense something or an emotion or that type of thing. And to be honest with you, I sometimes get asked or challenged and going, how do you know crystals work? And my answer is, I don't know how they work, but I do know that they do work. From history, from my own experience to on my YouTube channel, when I post a video and say, this is what I get when I work with amethyst, I then get reams of comments afterwards going, I got that as well. I got that as well. I got that as well. So I guess in our modern times, we all want to know what's right and how it happens and all that type of thing. And I would love to. And I guess, if there was millions of dollars invested on working out how crystals work, we could probably find out. But sometimes it's nicer to believe that there is a little bit of magic out there. And magic is just something we haven't actually worked out how it works yet, kind of thing. So unfortunately, I can't tell you exactly how they work. I know by having them around you, there is an impact and people experience that. And there seems to be a commonality that most people seem to get the same thing from certain crystals. And that's where I've kind of gone, okay, I guess they work then.
Oh, I love it. And so tell us about, I know you have some remarkable story about how it worked for you. So tell us some of those, if you have a story you can illustrate, just to, throw us a story. And then I have a follow-up question on that, because, it's 2020, a lot of people are talking about big dreams, big goals. So maybe you can recommend some crystal for people to, there's nothing to lose. So see whether these crystals work for you, right?
Okay, let me tell you 2 really quick stories. The first one, I'll talk to you about my partner. So I had decided that, okay, I'm sick of being single or, having short relationships. I'm ready to find the one. So I sat down, and I think one thing that's really important in manifestation is I wrote a list of everything that you want to, have. Physical attributes, star sign. I don't like cooking, so I love to cook. Yeah, well. Chose my star sign. Yeah, I chose a Leo. I don't know if that was wise or not now.
I'm a Leo, so I'm in a good side of the books then.
Oh, good. Yep. So, I love the passion of Leos and the big hardness of Leos and that type of thing. So, and I went with a crystal called kunzite. Now, I know people love rose quartz, which is often called the crystal of love, but it's got a very gentle and soft energy. And kunzite has a bit more soul and high vibration. So anyway, I'd sit with that each night and I'd visualize, close my eyes, that person coming into my life. Now, I didn't actually see them, because I think if you see them, if I'm visualizing someone with black hair and green eyes, then I'm cutting out all the blondes with blue eyes and different things like that. So I'd sense what it'd be like to be with that person, and I'd hold that crystal. And crystals, because I have energy in them, they'll hold that energy. And then even when they're not thinking about that, that vibration stays around you. And we know that like attracts like. So one thing, just a little side note of that, one thing I wasn't sure on that list is I love accents. I love the French accent. I love some of the British accent, Spanish. So I couldn't decide which accent I wanted. So I said exotic accent. So I carried that crystal around for 6 months, and I listened to the same song every night, feeling and sensing that person coming into manifestation. And it would have been probably 6 to 9 months later, I met my partner, who I've now been with for about 12 years. And I got everything on my list, apart from I got an American. So not exactly the exotic accent I was planning. I got everything else. Still an accent and that type of thing as well. So that was one little way of, bringing love into my life. And kunzite was really great for that. Another one that I found really profound was another crystal called citrine, which is a yellow one. So what I teach, and I teach this in a lot of my workshops, what you need is a $100 note, or whatever country you're in, your highest currency note, a citrine crystal, and some bergamot essential oil. Mm-hmm. So what you do is you sit there and visualize what the abundance in your life is like. What will that look like? Is it a holiday? Is it a bank balance? And that type of thing. Send that into the crystal. Once you've done that, you get some of the bergamot essential oil, rub that all over the crystal, all over the note, and the crystal and the note go into your purse or your wallet. So the crystal we've talked about, they hold energy, and if the purse is near you, it's going to bring in that abundant energy into your sphere. Bergamot, the oil works in 2 different ways. First of all, when we smell something, we go back to a memory. So when we smell that bergamot, it'll help us to feel abundant, like we're feeling in that meditation. The second thing is each oil helps in different emotional aspects, and bergamot helps us with our self-worth. And what I've found is the universe will pay you what you believe you're worth. And so it helps to increase your worth. Now, with that note, the trick is you're never allowed to spend it. And what happens each time you open your purse or your wallet from now on, instead of going, oh, I've got no money left, to go, oh, I've always got money. And it's actually changed the conversation you're having in your mind. Once I did that, I found that I stopped running out of money. You know, the people that always go, I hear people go, oh, do you mind if I pay on Thursday on my next pay or that kind of thing? My money still goes up and down. I have high and low bank balances, but I always have enough for what I need. I never run out. And so just doing those little experiments with crystals has kind of brought these things in, and I've kind of done them and played and tested the universe and crystals and oils throughout my life. And these little miraculous things have happened that have been shifts that have been really miraculous.
I definitely would try the citron piece, but my wallet is so small. Like I'm quite a minimalist, right? So I can take a very small citron pebbles, right? Like this, because I know some citron are quite triangular and big. There's some more rounded. It doesn't matter, is it? That sort of thing.
No, it's a funny question. I often get asked. Women are always asking me if size matters, and I assume they're talking about crystals. But if you think the vibration is on that microscopic level. So if the crystal is close to you, it's still going to have an impact. Obviously, a bigger crystal will have a bigger aura and impact larger spaces in the room. But a small crystal in the purse or the wallet, because that's near you, will work just well, really well.
I guess it's like, you know, as you say, if you have millions of dollars, you can devise different scientific method to explain how it works. But I guess also on a like psychological level, that you have always $100 in your wallet, so you know you actually have money. You may not spend it, but you always have it, and that's the psychological factor as well. And I also believe in ritual. A lot of times, it's a psychological preparation for what is to come. So it's not just about superstition. If you put everything together, science or not science, it's actually make a lot of sense, because a lot of times that what we believe becomes. So I definitely like that sort of little tricks in there. And I think, you know, for listeners who know a little bit of crystals, but maybe not as much as Adam, then, you know, kunzu is an interesting one. Kunzite, because I know a lot of people know about rose quartz to help with romantic love, but, you know, that's a new tip. So, so that the second part of the question I wanted to ask you is about dreams, like, I mean, as in goals and dreams of 2020. So a lot of people want to, you know, plan the year and say having success, because I know that you was also a success mentor. I suppose that you may have some, you know, ideas that what could be really like great for us to do at this time of the year. Say we're planning, you know, what we want to achieve, or maybe even more strategically. So, you know, I have a couple of projects coming up. So is there any particular things that you would do to help yourself in that sort of process? Like crystal grid or things that you do? Share with us some of the tricks or tips that you have.
Yeah, and there's some great references and books and that kind of thing where you can look up in the index what's the best crystal for, you know, expanding the business, or, you know, I think anything that, if you're looking at expansion, we're looking at kind of crystals that have a solar energy. So yellow and orange crystals or red crystals are really good. If you're looking for more peace and relaxation, that's where you're looking for your blue and your purple crystals, as a nutshell kind of thing. We could kind of go for hours on which crystal is best for every little thing. Now, you can either have a little tumbled stone, buy a nice piece of jewelry, or create a grid, which is kind of, you know, a basis of a grid is putting a major crystal in the middle, some points around it in a geometric position, and some other supporting crystals that maybe are like the supporting actors of a movie around as well. When I teach how to make grids, I don't say this is the only way you must do it. The thing with crystals is it's got to feel right to you. We could sit here and I could possibly teach you an ancient Egyptian way of bringing love or abundance into your life. But if you're sitting there saying something and it means nothing to you, then it's not going to work, because it's more our intention paired with these gifts from nature that's where the power comes. So, you know, what I recommend, if you have some goals for 2020, grab a crystal, grab an oil, or make a blend of oils, or find a blend of oils and meditate with them and match them to the intention. See that intention happening. Now, when we want something to happen, we don't just want to see like it's a daydream. We want to, imagine that I take away your sight, your smell, your taste, your hearing, and your sense of touch. What would the world become for you? Basically, would the world still be there? You couldn't actually tell because we'd only have our own mind. And so although we go, oh, they're just our five senses actually create our reality. So if we can change our reality for a second by changing our five senses, seeing ourselves there, smelling ourselves in our new manifestation in 2020 and all that, and send that into the crystal and hold that there, that crystal will hold that new reality. Oils, we know when we smell something, it takes us back somewhere. It works with our limbic part of our brain, our memories, and so we can use them to trigger us back. So once we've done things with our crystals and our oils, we don't kind of go, oh, well, that's that. We put it on the table and we wait for the loved one to knock on the door. If you do what you've always done, you're going to get what you've always got. And I think I was listening to something the other day where only 8% of New Year's resolutions are followed through to the end of the year. So we've got to look at, okay, so I've made this commitment with the crystal and the oil. That's my support. That's going to help me. But if I keep doing what I'm doing, nothing's going to change. What I notice with crystals and oils, working with them, is little synchronicities or little opportunities will come. But if you don't seize them, it's not going to come knocking at the door. You've got to go knocking on some doors yourself. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I think it's so important to have it keep on your conscious mind. Let's say whether it's about manifesting love or abundance that you touched on, you can't just, do the crystal meditation and the essential and leave it on the desk. You actually have to reinforce it on your mind, as in you think about it regularly, you make positive step, your action towards it. Like if it is about love, then go out and meet people or make yourself happy and ready to be in a relationship. Or if it's about business, then take some steps, create, learn something new or take some action. You can't just rely on all these powerful tools. I think it's a co-creation process. And also in my, one of the ebooks that I have recently done is it's also about finding clarity, productivity, and one of the things I talk about is exactly what you said, and I call them elevated emotion, because, you need to pair intention with an elevated emotion. So you not only you matches your six senses, they're like living as if, so that your body and your mind actually programmed to live through that, but you also have to feel the joy, the pleasure, rather than doubts or fear, that kind of like sort of your break and your gas kind of energy putting into it. So like exactly what you said, and I think I call it elevated emotion as well, to make sure when you put your six senses into it, make sure you actually feel good rather than secretly beating yourself up. It's like, why I don't deserve this love or this success because because then you're contradicting yourself. So yeah, I think definitely that's something. I didn't know that we have like this little trick in common.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, it's a common thing, and you'll find that commonality around. But I think that's where people sometimes falter. We love to handball our responsibility, and maybe if I find the right crystal, that'll bring my partner. But you've got to pair with these things. You've got to work in harmony with the universe and nature, and then it will give you a guiding hand. I find the universe loves action, and it will support action more than it will support sitting there and waiting, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think you need to show up for the universe to take you seriously, So, and for people who are really interested or curious about what Adam's talking about, I know that you're an author, you have some, you have a book behind you, and I think you have cards as well. So if people want to like sort of get into I don't want to say Crystal 101, but, getting some of the things you talk about quickly into the system. Which book maybe you can recommend us to tap into? And I will put your website link on a blog post on the podcast details as well. So I will include the link, but tell us if there's a couple of products that you think can really help people have a quick, awareness about what we're talking about.
Dive in. Yeah, definitely. Probably, the two books that I'd recommend if you're interested in crystals and oils, I've got one book called Crystal Connections, and there's lots of crystal books out there, and people always go, what's different about yours? And I found when I was growing up, a lot of crystal books would always say rose quartz good for love, citrine good for abundance, but they don't tell you what to do with them. So in that book, I've made sure that you've got those little activities that I've been kind of talking about before, like the wallet and the bergamot and that kind of thing as well. I've just released a brand new book called Gifts of the Essential Oils. And so if you're interested in the magical, spiritual, and the emotional healing of oils, that really looks at that in a deep way. And one thing that I've been really aware of right in that book that I co-authored with my friend Vanessa Jean was bringing people back to the nature. When people work with oils or crystals, I think sometimes they forget that these little brown bottles that have smelly stuff in them was gifted to us by a plant somewhere in the world. And our ancestors, if a plant had a purple flower like lavender or clary sage, it had a very different energy to something that had maybe a white flower like a magnolia or a jasmine. It had different astrology. So I take people back to look at the plant and understand the plant, and that'll tell you what the oil does. You don't need to become, you don't need to study for years. It can be quite simple and that type of thing. And so I guess I kind of pride myself on giving people a lot of information, but I also like to keep it in simple language. I don't like to use too many big terms or new age terms or that type of thing. I have some young, 10-year-olds and kids around that age that have bought my books and enjoy it. And I have, people of all ages beyond 10 that also enjoy the book as well. So I think it's thorough without being too overwhelming. So it's a great starting point.
Yeah, and I love what you said because, visually it's very funny. Like when you talk about lavender or clary sage, purple flower, more relaxing. I think that was such a great connection because it make it really easy in our mind to get a reference. Like, oh yeah, that's true. So that's a very relaxing color. And then the funny thing is that, when we're doing something, when we're in sync, the minds are joined, right? So when you talk, when you're about to say the color white, in my head, I saw a magnolia flower.
Oh, wow.
And then you said magnolia. I was like, whoa, that was quite interesting. And,
there you go.
And it was really cool. And but I wanted to ask you, because it seems to me you work with the essential and crystal quite a lot side by side. So is your new book has reference on that too? Or, so one book is very much crystal, one book is very much essential oils. So if we want to work on both modality, we may need to read 2 books. So is it one of these 2 books actually cross-reference a bit?
They both cross-reference a bit. So in my crystal book, Crystal Connections, at the start of each chapter, I recommend a plant that corresponds. I love correspondences, so pairing them together. So I'll talk about, like I'll say with amethyst, lavender worked really well. And in that chapter, I'll talk about how to work well with them together. In the gift book, there's a practice to do with each oil, and many of them have crystals in it. So there is a bit of a crossover. But the crystals is majority of crystals, the other ones mainly oils, but there'll always be a crossover, and animal guides come into a lot of it as well, angels, and that type of thing as well.
Because I think lots of listeners or readers, they will probably have a preference in terms of which modality they're more drawn to. If they love crystals more, or they seem to be more curious about it right now, then the crystal book, it may be more, the first step because they already have reference with essential oil. But on the other hand, if you feel like you're more drawn to smelly stuff, which I think I started with essential oils too, then I will get the gift book, which is more about essential, but with cross-reference with crystals.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so last but not least, I want to wrap up our chat today about the bushfire, because we talked about it at the beginning. Because I know you probably have your own opinion about what's happening, what should we do? Because I know that from your work, you talk a lot about how we all live in an ecosystem. Not just so much that we throw trash in the environment, therefore affect environment and affect water system. That's sort of a very direct thing. But I think even, with our thoughts, with the way how we treat each other, everything is energy, right? So it's kind of all across the board, how we live our life affect environment, and the environment respond and affect our life back. It's really much kind of go hand in hand. And I know there's a lot of talk about climate change prevention, or what do we need to do. And there's a lot of talks in Australia because of the bushfire. So I want to hear a little bit about your opinion about what's happening and what we should do, and what do you think may happen next. And also maybe, wow, my question is so double layered, that it's like about astrology as well. So tell us a little bit more about what you see in 2020 with that sort of focus.
I think when we look back at how cultures in the past used to live, we were very agricultural around the world, and they relied on being in tune with nature to be able to grow things. You know, you don't plant seeds in a snowstorm kind of thing. So we used to live really in harmony with nature and work with her and respect her because we needed that. As we've kind of modernized, we've become removed from nature. And I find it interesting how many people are that detached from nature in different ways. A classic example I use a lot is that before the advent of electricity, all women's menstrual cycles were exactly in time with the moon. So, we don't have to go and dive into menstrual cycles today, but it shows that probably how much people are out of tune with nature. The Native Americans in North America have long prophesied that there would be a time when there would be, the birds would fall out of the sky, the fish were dying, and that type of thing, and it would need to come back to Mother Nature. And I believe that's happening, and has been happening for many years now, and that's given the scientific term of climate change, and there would be other spiritual terms for it as well. It is Mother Nature saying that we need to pay attention, and I believe the bushfires are the next step up for us to go, need to live in harmony with nature, and we see that we're not. The bushfires are absolutely devastating, and I live in the bush. I've had to evacuate my house in the past, and I know how scary it is. I've never lost anything in a bushfire, and I can imagine what people are losing there. The thing that hurts me the most is the amount of animals that are absolutely, we are at the risk of losing koalas in the wild, which is one of our iconic Australian animals, because of both government action and culling koalas and the amount of bushfires and that kind of thing as well. My hope is that, fire, we often focus on the destruction, but fire as a spiritual element, with our fire signs like our Leos, our Sagittarians and our Aries, are about transformation. So fire closes doors, it destroys things, but it then opens new ones. In Australia, certain seed pods won't open if they're not exposed to fire. There are different animals, there are birds of prey in Australia that use fire. They'll pick up smouldering sticks, fly them elsewhere to start new fires, to flush out rodents, to get things. So fire has its practical, and I'm not saying that these bushfires are good by all means. I'm hoping, the fact that the Golden Globe Awards were dominated by talk about the bushfires is that how much do we need to be slapped in the face before we actually go, I need to make a change? And the scary thing is, it's not until, unfortunately, a person is affected individually that we tend to really change that much. I hope that the bushfires will be a bit of a catalyst. The New York Times are talking about this being the Chernobyl of climate change, that this is a big wake-up call, and I hope that this is as bad as it gets, because I think if we don't start making changes, if we don't respect Mother Nature and fall back in line and work in harmony with her, and we know how to do that, it's just we're resistant, then these bushfires will be nothing on what could happen in years to come. So I think it's just Mother Nature equilibrating herself, bringing everything back into balance, and she'll continue to do that. Nature, doesn't, I know we like to personify it, but it's everything's all about balance. And we see in any ecosystem, nature regains balance. And this is Mother Nature to bring balance back. And it's up to humans what kind of life we want to do and how much that imbalance and seesaw we want to live in.
Yeah, I really love what you sort of taking us through the consequences of fire. Of course, it's devastating, but as you said, fire opens the new door, because I think I heard a lot about 2020 is about transformation. So it's a big wake-up call. It burns and kind of clear up everything else. So you kind of, there's no other way but you need to rebuild and really look harder at what we do. So it could be a catalyst, like you said. So it's kind of interesting time to begin our 2020 with this fire. So yeah, I mean, I think in some ways that I'm devastated, but I'm also excited to see a lot more awareness being brought out there, and hopefully we're going to do something right this time. So
definitely. And I've seen even comments on social media of people going, oh, well, it's the government's fault, or I can't do anything, I'm on the other side of Australia, or that kind of thing. But maybe we can't impact those fires that are happening, and people will be listening in months after this, but we can do something. And, whether it be Greta Thunberg, one young lady who's making people think about that. And I know people bag her, but she's doing a lot more than others that can't even be bothered separating their recycling kind of thing. I think if every single person does what they can, then that would make a difference. And it's just that most people go, well, I can't make a difference, so I won't bother. And so
and that
wherever
it can
we
no
are
longer
in the world,
be tolerated. That I
No.
cannot be bothered thing. It's too late and it doesn't help, and it's just the old attitude. I think what I'm excited about 2020 is that this is a new attitude. We have to change, we have to transform. It's right in your front door. So, and I hope that will bring that element and sort of just this is what I feel in the air. And I mean, when this goes out, I'll probably write a short notes about it too. That will probably be February or even March. Then maybe we will see what's happening. So I'm excited to see better, more positive changes to come in 2020.
Definitely. And my challenge is, if you're sitting here listening and you're going, well, why should I bother? I would challenge you to go for an hour's walk out in nature, not in a park, but in a forest or something like that, wherever you can get to wherever you are in the world, and feel the impact of that. And imagine that is what nature brings back to us. It brings us that harmony and that balance and that peace and that happiness and all the things we're looking for in our modern day life. And that is why separating our recycling, making eco-conscious decisions, because we need to preserve those environments, because we actually may not have them for the future if we don't.
Totally agree with you. So thank you so much today, Adam. It has been delightful to chat with you, and I wish you a very exciting, prosperous, and transformative 2020.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for your time and for having me on.